I think that's William down there in the corner.
No, it's Jody, I think, isn't it? William, Jody? Oh,
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
It's William.
William, nice to meet you.
Morning, Jenny Lay-Flurrie's interpreter.
Hi, Belinda. Good morning.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon here, but good morning in Seattle or wherever you are.
One of those things, yeah. North of Seattle, but same time zone as Seattle, unlike yourself.
Hi, Belinda. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Give a few moments to everybody to join.
Yeah, no worries.
Hello, everyone. We are going to start in a couple of minutes, allowing others to join.
She's here, the lady herself. Hello, Jenny.
Ah, hello, Jenny.
Hello, folks. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Wonderful. So wonderful to have you, Jenny. It's actually a real privilege to have you on our weekly show. And thank you for giving your time in this so busy schedules you've got.
Oh my gosh, pleasure is all mine. So thank you for having us and thank you for doing all this.
Yeah, you're so kind. I believe we can start now. Okay, thank you very much.
Now the guest of honor has joined us, Jenny Lay-Flurrie from Microsoft.
Indeed, absolutely. And thank you, everyone. Just a very quick welcome from me. This is our lucky 8. Jenny comes last on our first series, and obviously, we leave the best for last. And we started with Kate Nash, amazing networkologist, she calls herself. Christine Hemifield, she did that digital accessibility, the importance. Then we had Shani, all important diversity and inclusion. We had the amazing Nancy Doyle, who talked about neurodiversity, which is an important subject these days. Then we had the fantastic Diane Lightfoot, Business Disability Forum. Awesome lady. And of course, Deborah Rue. Nothing is complete without Deborah. She's again one of those force of nature people, done amazing things for accessibility globally. And of course, Suzanne Scott Parker. And she's a giant of a person in this area. But as I said, best for last, we've got Jenny Lay-Flurrie and Chief Accessibility Officer Global, that is from Microsoft. So Anna will give us the welcome and then we'll start.
Yeah. So welcome to Microlink's Great Change, Great Women webinar series with Jenny Lay-Flurrie, as Nasser's already said, from Microsoft. Quick housekeeping section. There'll be a Q&A at the end, so please put any questions in the chat. Please be respectful to all others. We want everyone to feel welcome, safe and respected. Accessibility features are captioning service by MyClearText. Thank you very much for supporting us. Switch on captioning at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Closed captioning showed subtitles if you'd like to have that facility, and follow the conversation with hashtag Great Change, Great Women on social. So I'm just going to read a little bit first about Jenny, and I hope she doesn't, blush and get, oh goodness me, because it's quite a biography I'm about to read, but very impressive. So Jenny is Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, leading the company's efforts to drive great products, services and websites that empower people and organizations to achieve more. Her team is at the forefront of creating positive experiences that apply technology to make a difference in the world and the lives of individuals, from how we hire and support people with disabilities and employment to innovative technology that aims to revolutionize what's possible for people with disabilities. With the help of her team and broad community within Microsoft, Jenny leads many initiatives to empower people with disabilities both inside and outside of Microsoft. She founded the Disability Employee Resource Group at Microsoft and chaired it for 10 years. She created the Disability Answer Desk, which provides specialist customer support to people with disabilities and has handled over 1 million calls to date. Hosts the annual Microsoft Ability Summit, which focuses on empowering 2,000 plus attendees with the inclusive and innovative thinking necessary to enable people around the world, and be instrumental in projects such as Autism Hiring Program, Soundscape, and the Microsoft Ability Hackathon, which has supported over 500 hackathon teams building technology for people with disabilities. Lay-Flurrie, Jenny was recognized as nominated as a technology groundbreaker by CEO Satya Nadella in Wired magazine, and who's the CEO, right, of Microsoft, and is a contributor to the book The Ability Hacks, which shares behind the scenes stories of the hackers who pioneered 2 innovative hack-turned solutions used by people with disabilities worldwide. Outside of Microsoft, Jenny is the current board chair of Disability In and is on the board of the Gallaudet University and Team Gleason, and she was recognized as the Disability Employment Champion of Change by the White House in October 2014, and as one of Fast Company's most creative people in business 2017. When do you sleep?
Before we start, we must apologize to Belinda for the fast speed by which Anna went through this, so I don't envy her job today. Hopefully
Sorry, Belinda, I'm sorry, I was too fast. I completely forgot about it. I'm just so used to, our guests feeling a little bit uncomfortable when I read all their accreditations, and so I just get through that as fast as possible so everybody knows who's on the call. So I'm sorry, Belinda, please forgive me.
Signing is not the easiest thing, especially if people do speed reading. So my apologies. And obviously the same goes for Jenny Lay, because she's obviously trying to read the sign as well. So anyway, we will be a bit more careful.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'll be slower now.
Folks, you're fine. I honestly, I don't listen to any of that, because
you know it.
Well, Jenny's just fine, and Belle is has been an interpreter for many years, and it's not her first rodeo. So yeah, we're all good.
Thank goodness. I'm sorry. I'm so I get hooked into the moment, and that's it. I'm off.
You're all good. You're all good. Good folks. Let's go.
So
yes. So first question. To start us off, can you set the stage by giving us a sense of what accessibility and disability inclusion mean to you and how you got started in the field?
Oh, crikey. I'll maybe take the latter part of that first. So I got started in this field, the benefit of hindsight, I can see where the seeds began. My parents I'm British. I'm sitting here in Seattle right now, but I was actually born and dragged and in the middle of England near Birmingham, and my parents are both teachers. In fact, my dad went on to be a special needs advisor, and they were both head teachers for quite a few years. And I think that grew a lot of awareness with special needs in the house. And also, I'm deaf. Yeah, my voice is great, but I can't hear you. My sister was born with deafness. My dad has deafness depending on the day. His sliding deafness. And so disability was just a common conversation, bluntly. I volunteered in a special needs school that was right on there with the comp that I was in, all the way through from 11 to 18, and then went on, I went to music college, but went into every summer I'd spend my time on summer camps for kids with disabilities. So it was kind of part of how I grew up.
Yeah, sure.
And then, you know, after realizing that music wasn't going to pay my rent, you know, and got into IT at the time, really over time, it was my own deafness that led me down the path, and curiosity that led me down the path of accessibility, working with people with disabilities, and everything in that bio was achieved by an army of humans, bringing their thoughts to the fore to build it. And then 5 years ago became CAO. So it's been a long journey, but I think at the core of accessibility and disability is inclusion. It's how do you empower people with disabilities, disabled talent, to live into whatever they want to do, work, life, play, and anything else that's on the agenda. And accessibility is often the means to enable that, to provide access, whether it's a physical ramp or it's a digital, you know, a digital feature.
Removes barriers.
What's that?
Removes barriers so that there are no barriers. They can get on and do whatever they want.
Right. It can remove barriers. It can empower. I mean, for me, I'm joining this with captions. I'm joining this with sign language. If I didn't have those things, I wouldn't be able to do that. Forgive me. The dogs have woken up. Hang on.
Well, this is the beauty of Zoom.
No, children and pets.
Yeah,
you love them.
Children
They've both gone outside. All good. But I think you know, accessibility is the means to access. It's also the means. It can also disempower, and it can also absolutely do the opposite. In the absence of accessibility, and it can very quickly exclude. And so, you know, my job now is really to ensure that a company, you know, we've got 150,000 nerds across this company around the world, that we live and breathe into that principle of inclusion, and empowering people with disabilities. And we open doors where they're vehemently closed, and there are a lot of closed doors out there right now.
Yeah, there are, but we are slowly knocking on them and pushing them open. So I'm encouraged by what's happening, especially over the last few years. I've seen a marked improvement in acceptance, and yes, let's give it a go and let's try. So that's good. So my next question, can you give us a sense of why accessibility and disability inclusion are so important to Microsoft, and what opportunities it presents from a business perspective?
So yeah, I think there was a great study done in 2018, and that study in 2018 really looked at what was the impact of disability inclusion on companies. It was done by Accenture. And they looked at companies that had invested in disability inclusion and companies that had not, and found a pretty stark difference in the financial performance of those companies. And I think it was something that when it came out, and it showed that companies that had invested in disability inclusion had double the net income of companies versus not. And for all of us that live and breathe this stuff, we were like, of course. I mean,
what we've been telling you.
Right. I mean, we know that while we have disabilities, we are so, you know, well, let me reframe that. We have disabilities and we're talent. But the societal lens on disability is sometimes so skewed that that's not necessarily talked about or realized anywhere near as much as it should be. And I think it highlighted the opportunity for us to do a lot more. We've done a lot more research in the last 6 months as we're coming out of a pandemic, and what we think is going to happen with the disability community. What is the onus on accessibility and the learning from this pandemic? And what we found, unfortunately, is that we believe that the disability divide, which is that gap in societal inclusion, is widening. The demographic is going up, mental health, long COVID. The use of accessibility is also going up. We've seen that in the last year. But unfortunately, unless we do something really, really ambitious, that divide is going to widen. So, you know, I think it's incumbent on us to invest. And when I say us, I mean all of us. You know, global society, to invest here, to grow awareness, grow use of digital accessibility, to invest in taking that nerd bar higher of what accessibility can do, and really leaning into the principles of digital inclusion and disability inclusion.
Jenny, I've known Microsoft been involved with accessibility for many years. I remember 2008-9, we had joined by Managing Director of Microsoft in Business Disability Forum. But what are the drivers for the accessibility? Where did it come from, and who was driving it? And when did that paradigm shift happen?
I love a bit of history. So let's go there for a second. The history of accessibility at Microsoft is that it really started in the 90s. And it started with a technical investment, and Bill Gates first sort of anointed it as part of trustworthy computing back then. And there were probably some other efforts as well. And actually, if you go back and look at some of the early accessibility features that Microsoft did, one of the earliest that we found is sticky keys. When you hit enter, it's a shortcut for mobility and dexterity, and you get a pop-up that comes up. So it's still there today, which is awesome. And if I look through the history, you know, in a 25+ year history, you've had moments of brilliance and moments of not. And we've definitely learned a lot from that, where to put accessibility in the company, how to prioritize it, resource it, finance it. What level of empowerment do you give it? Where do you place it in hierarchy? How do you manage this like a business? And I would say the last 5 years, we've learned probably more than we have. And in many ways, it's all a culmination of a lot of our learning. We now treat accessibility like an ecosystem. So it's not a technical enterprise or a people, it's an ecosystem of both. So it's built on the principle that you've got to have disabled talent in the core and fabric of your company, empowered and supported, to the point where they're driving innovation, feedback. This is great, this is not, this is a great idea. And you're driving that on a global scale. And then you start to see accessibility along with managing accessibility like a business. And I really mean that. It's a core priority, top down, bottom up. Then you start to see it become endemic and not optional and not something that's done at the end of a dev cycle. It's core to the principles of design. And so that's really the journey we're on. It's building that sustainable ecosystem. And then bluntly, we got to take the bar up if we're going to get after the disability divide.
And actually, once you drive that towards universal inclusion and it becomes part of everyday design, then isn't that when you actually find it becomes productivity tool rather than just inclusion? Because anyone who uses your accessibility and assistive technology tools can become better in doing their job, regardless of whether they're disabled or not.
Yeah, I do think that, yes, the bar has definitely grown and increased. And I think one of the key things, maybe to linger on what you said, I don't think accessibility, the responsibility should be on disabled people for accessibility. It should be on us all to provide a more inclusive culture. And I'll give you one quick example of that. You know, one feature that the Office team worked on was accessibility checker. It sits right next to spell check in the review tab of any Office document. And you know, that's been there, and you can check your documents, whatever it is, to make sure that it's fully accessible, inclusive, it's got alternative text and everything else that's needed. But one of the other things was making sure that everyone's using it. Everyone.
Correct.
So they've just turned it on by default, meaning that you will now be notified exactly, you know, it'll be in the bottom left of your screen. Actually, it will say if your document's not accessible as you're building it, it will say accessibility investigate. And in Outlook, there'll be a prompt if you're trying to send a large email that's not accessible. And so, you know, that responsibility is all of ours. It's not just you know, features that empower me as a disabled person. It's features that all of us should have a responsibility to use. And we're trying to make that not an optional thing.
Fantastic. One more question about Microsoft's own journey of disability and inclusion. Obviously, Microsoft is a mature company. And what is Microsoft doing on recruitment and retention of disabled talent for the global workforce? And what's worked well and what hasn't yet been accomplished? And what's your advice for other companies on this journey?
Right. I mean, the first thing I would say with all of this is that it's a learning journey. We are far from perfect, far from achieved any of our goals, but we do learn a lot every year that helps us. You know, we learn what not to do as well as what to do, and I think that culture of inclusion within the company is core to what we do. You know, we've got a very strong ERG. I was privileged to be a part of that for many years and still am as sponsor of that work. But I think the core principles there is making sure it's now got 22 groups, it's global. And most of the new groups are in visible, non-apparent disability areas. And the goal of that group is really to provide community. You know, that kind of simple thing is of knowing someone who's like you. In the company is just so very important, and I think it's one core part of making sure that there is that sort of ecosystem of support. And so central accommodations are global, self-identification is global. We talk about disability as a strength. It's in all of our forums. We talk about disability. It's not talked about enough, but it's in. You know, last week I was honored to speak at the Satya employee Q&A. I mean, it's in every forum that we have. And so you've got the sort of underlying support frameworks. And then as conversations and our learning grows, and we're able to pick up those themes and move forward with them and iterate as we need to. And I think I would never want a person with a disability to believe that there's a ceiling to where they can go. I've definitely felt that for different times and different reasons. I call those brick wall moments. They happen. But you do need to have people around you that can help you to knock them down or figure a way around them or through them or under them, and they will happen. So it's having all those pieces in place.
And what's your biggest challenge? Trying to remove those barriers, or what needs to be done differently in your opinion that could accelerate that? Because every company will have the same challenges as what you're having.
You know, I'd say to any company, I get a lot of, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Just hire someone, you'll learn. It's really not hard. And change your lens on how you see disability. You know, disability is a strength. If you don't have disabled talent in your company, well, one, I would question that. You probably do. You just don't realize it, or they don't feel safe enough to identify. But two, you're missing out, because actually that is core to how we scale our program. Is leaning on talent, telling us what's working, what's not. So, you know, and in terms of core challenges that I have, you know, they change based on month and year. The last year, my gosh, we had a plan for last year. It didn't kind of work out. We had to take a bit of a back step and really look at the impacts of the pandemic and virtualization of the workforce overnight, and what was needed in all of our tools and systems and processes. Because clearly that had an enormous impact on the disabled community, both internally and externally, some very positive, some very not. So I think right now, if you were to say, you know, what's my headache right now, it's making sure that we're continuing to listen, we're continuing to iterate and take that feedback into products. That means the Disability Answer Desk, that support channel, which has been in many ways up to 300% of volume as people are turning to technology consistently for the last 12 months. We're taking all of that feedback, we're getting it into trainings and webinars. We've actually put all of our training online, so folks can just go grab it. You know, and we're really making sure that we're empowering people with the nerdery that we provide, and I think that's incredibly important right now.
I love that word, nerdery. That's fabulous. I haven't heard that before, nerdery. I like that. That's cool. So how do you involve people with disabilities into the design process and create these features? And I mean, how does that come about?
You know, I think there's two things with design. well, there's one generalized principle, which is the nothing about us without us. I mean, if you don't have disability at the table in the design and build, you're not going to get it right. If you don't have accessibility principles in the design and build, then you're going to be in remediation mode before you're trying to ship a product. That costs time and money. So, and delays, bluntly. And that does happen. We do delay things if we don't see the right bar. So, I think it's a business priority to make sure that it is shifted left. It is right the way at the beginning of the design cycle. That how we do it, I think if you live into accessible by design and then the principles of inclusive design, then it's making sure that you're designing with and for and through people with disabilities. And so you're leveraging that feedback. We've had to build some systematic processes to do that, bluntly, because we ship a lot. We're a very big company. A lot of our products are shipping daily, weekly, monthly. And so, we're having a one part that's making sure we do the right inclusive design sprints to look at a product. We're really powering our hackathons and our employees and what they're creating and giving them insight. All employees have mandatory accessibility training. But at the other end, we're also making sure that as we look at products, we're testing them. And we've got some really amazing providers that help us to do that at scale. And that's testing with people with disabilities.
So you train everybody. I heard you say it was mandatory for everybody in the company to learn about accessibility.
Yes.
Can I just ask you, why don't we do this to teachers in schools?
Isn't that a great question? I think as I peeled back and me and a great team, we peeled back the layers of the onion of what is happening in the disability world over the last 6 months. I've been in a bit of a research foxhole looking at the trends. And we saw the need for digital accessibility, and that's part of us putting this goal out of disability divide and then having a technology-led approach to go tackle it. But actually, the next piece of that puzzle is the talent pipeline. As we started looking at how do we change unemployment rate, underemployment, labor participation rates, which are the key statistics here, and we start going back into the education employment pipeline and life cycle, you find that doors are closed all over the place. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's not systematically taught in college and university. It's not a core part of computer science degree. Now it is in some. I actually joined a University of Washington's class last night, talking about accessibility. I had a great time chatting about accessibility yesterday with those guys. Some universities it is, and Teach Access is trying to actually span that out to a bunch of universities, but it's not systematic today. If you go before university, the awareness of digital accessibility, things like Immersive Reader, which has been out there now a number of years. It's got 35 million monthly active users. It's a tool for dyslexic to help you to read tough content or just frame it in a way that we know is going to improve your reading rate by 10%. It's just embedded into Word, embedded into OneNote and all of our tools. Does everyone know about that? If not, why not? Because dyslexia, we know, is 5% of that classroom. Probably more. So no, I think there's clearly a lot more. And I did love, actually, one of the things we announced 2 weeks ago was a new partnership with the Department of Work and Pensions, the guys that the agency behind the job centers. And we're going to be working and partnering with them with their 26,000 job.
Oh, dog's back.
Time for a break, I think.
It's early.
Yeah.
Children are running. They are scurrying.
It's very early in the morning out there, and you're asking them to be quiet, and they've just woken up, and the dogs want to play, and kids want to make noise. And
I know. I'm so sorry, folks. So rude.
Okay, it's absolutely fine. Yeah,
the Department of Work and Pensions, just to finish that thought, we've got 26,000 job coaches, and we're going to be training them on accessibility tools.
Yes.
So, simple things like that, we hope grows the awareness and density and use of accessibility.
Jenny, I have worked in early education. I have shown the assistive technology, the power of assistive technology in engaging children, not just children with learning disabilities, all children. It's an amazing, powerful, and effective tool for every teacher to learn. And I think this is where our education is missed out, the trick about how to get maximum engagement from their kids so that they don't fail in so early education. So Microsoft has an amazing leadership role in this because everyone uses Microsoft, and the way you've conducted this accessibility and inclusion agenda, it's an amazing opportunity for Microsoft to be able to influence the future of our education. Our teachers certainly need confidence, certainly need to be told that this is not threatening the way of teaching, actually enhances it. So I think hopefully Microsoft can go back and talk to the planners and educationalists to make sure that inclusive education includes the assistive technology.
Yeah, I agree. I will give credit to the incredible number of educators who are on this. And there is an array of tools that they've learned, they know about, they're sharing. And bluntly, the parents that have invested their time to learn. And I think our job is to make those tools easier to find, easier to use, affordable. Often you'll just see them embedded into product. We work with a third-party ecosystem that has an amazing additional array of tools. So, I want to give a lot of credit to the progress that's being made. And it really is thanks to amazing humans who are really just driving this forward. Is there opportunity? Yes. And I think this year has illuminated that opportunity. As even as I'm parenting my kids and attempting to educate, they are hopefully in classes upstairs. We shall see, because we are still virtual. My kiddo, my youngest, is in school 2 days a week right now, and she went back after 383 days of being out. And as an autistic kid, that was a incredible year, incredible transition. So I see the opportunities every day myself as a parent, and I also see the progress that is being made. So yes, I bluntly, I think holistically, accessibility needs to be taught, and it's never been more important.
Yeah, I'd like to see it inside teacher training.
We developed a whole library of e-learning for accessibility and also assistive technology built into Microsoft. So as your gold partners, how can we help support all these activities you are currently conducting, including like training, job center, advisors, including education and teachers? Because it is just amazing how it can transform their lives and make them more effective in what they do. So how can we come on board and help Microsoft to deliver that message?
Well, one, I just deeply appreciate you asking the question. I mean, this is what's going to make the difference. It's not going to be one company. It's going to be the incredible amount of companies in society that's going to help make the difference here. And I think there's cool things. I mean, I think the importance for any partner, for any organization, is one, to get educated, right? We put our training online. There's lots of others up there. Our training is aka MS/accessibility fundamentals. Get educated, power that to your employees, make sure that people know, and it includes simple things like, how do you talk about disability? What's the right language? Because that, by the way, those simple things, those are massive hurdles that can happen, and really confidence comes from education. So one, I think, is get educated. Two is to get familiar with the tools and use them, explore them, give yourself time. I would say the rate of accessibility innovation in the last 5 years, it's hard to keep up. There's a lot of new things that have come out. Many people don't even realize what is just in that box right in front of you, whatever company it's from. If you've got a PC, you've got color blindness filters that sit. You've got a night light, which, by the way, is the same as those blue glasses. Just turn that on when you're on a screen for 8-10 hours a day. Trust me, it helps. I have it permanently switched on. We've got eye control in the core of Windows. There's captioning. There's all manner of good things that just sit right there. Take the time to play, to use, and then share them. I think that's the other one. It's like, hey, even with my team yesterday, we were all talking actually about how our eyes are tired with the virtual world. And we were all sharing what we're using. And I use multiple screens. I use magnification when I need to. I have nightlight permanently turned on. And I just find that slightly less bright yellow helps to really drive. And bear in mind, I'm deaf, so I'm really using my eyes every day. So we were just talking about all the different things that we're doing. And so much of it can just be switched on like that. So talk about it, use it, and share it.
Isn't one of the problems that we have, there's information overload, and when do people get time to learn these great tools? Because they are amazing, they are life transforming, and they need to be used. But I think people just get overwhelmed with so much information every day, so much change.
I think that's, we've had a lot of change in the last year, haven't we? And if we take stock from some of that, it is important to manage your cognitive load, to give yourself, there was a great piece of research published last week talking about the impact of taking breaks between meetings and just what the cruciality of that for durability. But I will say with accessibility, I would vehemently recommend that you just spend 30 minutes a month looking and playing with those tools. And I'll just give one quick example. As my deafness slid from being mild deaf to moderate to severe profound, which is where I am now, I had to really change my lens on the information that I took in. My world used to be all audio based, and now my world is 100% visual based. And had to learn how to lean on captions, and then learn how to lean on sign language interpreters and their expertise. And as I flicked to virtual last year, like many others, had to figure out how to do my job in a virtual world where my ASL interpreter is 2D, not 3D. And I'm reliant on tools and systems to present her in the right way so that I can see it. There's change involved in each of those. But I think if you're committed, and I think if you give yourself the time and rely on others to help, like the Disability Answer Desk, like the community that you're part of. Now, there may be blockers that are in the way that we can help remove or we can guide on, but just it does take some consistent, and bluntly, I don't think that's incumbent on all of us to be more inclusive. Right? Again, it's good. It's not just for people with disabilities.
Yeah, it's good investment.
Yes.
You have to make the time. If you want something badly enough, I think you find the time, don't you? You learn how to do things. It's just got to be, if you know it's there, that helps. So
sometimes very simple tricks could save you quite a few minutes a day because you keep doing it the old and the wrong way. And as soon as you discover these tools, it's amazing how efficient you become in doing your job, day job. Whether you are disabled or not is irrelevant. Anna, I'm stealing your question.
The impact of COVID. Let's talk about the lovely C word.
Of course, that it reduced hectometer's carbon footprint by 90%. Apart from that, what are the benefits?
I think he's on today.
Oh, is he? Oh, well.
I saw his name. Yes, I did. Hector. Hello,
Scratch
Hector.
that. My favorite Microsoft man.
Yeah, he's done a lot over here as well, hasn't he, for the cause. So, right, this has been a very challenging year for all of us, and the move to remote work has required adjustment from all of us as we learn to use technology in new ways. And it's pushed people to accessibility. As you reflect on the past year, how have you seen technology being used differently, and what have you learned as a technology company?
So yes, it's definitely been, and by the way, I love that, you know, Hector knows everyone, just to give him a call out. I learn from Hector on a daily basis, and he keeps me alive with his messages. But I do, let's talk about COVID. And we've already mentioned, I think, the change cycle that there was and has been in terms of us all moving to virtual. We all had to figure out how best to work. We all had to figure out our communications environment. For me, that's majority Microsoft Teams. Clearly Zoom comes into that and other things, but just, you know, figuring out that work. We also had to adapt our work environments and our work. You know, I had to build a desk. I clearly didn't do a good job with the dogs, but, you know, we had to sort of adjust how we work and how our work environment adapts. I think if you look at it and zoom up, the disability community got one thing that they've been asking for decades, which was the flexibility and option to be able to work from home, and to not have to tackle transport barriers, time, expense that is incumbent on often going into the workplace. That was a big win, and I think we should really make sure that we recognize that, particularly as we start going back to hybrid and some degree of, you know, what people are calling normality, but I think it's bluntly a very new normal. So, you know, one, I think we've got to bear in mind the freedom that has happened for many people with working from home. You know, not having to pay for a personal care assistant, or you just deal with that extra load of having to transport in and out. So just, you know, there's some key things there that I think are very important. On the other hand, there's also been a lot of issues that have floated up at the same time. As people, you know, I had one parent on my team who within a few weeks was just throwing her arms up because as a blind parent of a kid in school, in elementary school, wow, she was receiving inaccessible documents. And so, you know, how you as a parent, let alone a child, are receiving digital information that may not be accessible suddenly becomes a massive barrier. If you're receiving, if you're in a workplace that virtually doesn't have what you may need to be successful, so you don't have captions when you need it, or you don't have an interpreter when you need it, those challenges started to come to the fore. So I think we saw that come through. We saw Teams captions, so live captions grew 30x April versus February last year, right? No. Huge numbers, which, you know, goes to illustrate the shift that there was to leveraging in tools for independent use. Yeah, and we're adding and continuing over the last year. We've been adding a bunch of features into Teams, things like hand raise, for which actually was designed by a neurodiverse engineer to make sure that you don't have that awkwardness of when do I interrupt? You just put your hand up. Transcripts, live captions, penning and dynamic view for interpreters. We announced CART integrations, so manual captions, human provided. Those that we're going to have a plugin for that coming through this summer. And I think there's a lot more to be done. A whole suite of additional features for blind users using screen readers, the ability to have high contrast mode just follow through. So there's a lot more still to do, but I think it's bluntly from us, it's accelerated the wave of investment and innovation in some of our core tools. It's, you know, a lot of these are features that, yes, should have been in there, but many of them were also very specific to this virtual world. We hadn't flicked to it before and came out of that. So looking forward to continuing that bluntly as we go forward. I think that acceleration of innovation is going to continue.
Well, thank you. We're keen to allow some questions, but I've got one very last question from me. Microsoft has announced a 5-year ambition around helping to close the disability divide. And also, we know there is massive inequalities with education in the emerging economies, the developing countries. We could benefit from all the Microsoft's leadership in this area. So what is Microsoft doing on this global stage of helping these developing countries to actually narrow the gap as well, especially for disabled learners? According to Global Business Coalition for Education, there would be 870 million youngsters who will not have the necessary skills for their future jobs by 2030. I mean, that's where Microsoft could play a huge role.
Yeah. So this is our next chapter. You know, we talked a while ago about the history of accessibility at Microsoft, and we actually just announced this as our next chapter, our next huge goal, which is we want to help tackle this disability divide. We can't do it on our own. We cannot do it as one company. It really is something that we need partnership on. We need to co-innovate. We need to drive a new bar of inclusion and a new usage level of accessibility. Across technology, we need to open those doors in the talent pipeline where they are closed. And then we need to continue to really blow up our own culture and continue to grow and build on the great work that people have been doing over the last several years to, again, just build that ecosystem of durable, sustainable accessibility within Microsoft. So we're really getting after this. And I think, you know, the first pillar is really the technology-led pillar. What can we do to embed accessibility and take up the bar of productivity, delightful experiences, usability in everything that we do? How can we lean into AI? We've learned a lot from AI. You know, Accessibility Checker leverages a ton of AI. It will make recommendations on alternative text for you. It will, you know, we've got AI tools. That's what Teams Live Captions is built on, is artificial intelligence. How do we take that up? Right. And I think the small but significant moves here may sometimes be the biggest. Things like running Accessibility Checker in the background, prompting people if Outlook recognizes that they're going to send an email that isn't accessible. Those things don't just mean that the tools are there for people when and how they need it, but it becomes part of how everyone works, how everyone plays, how everyone drives forward. So, you know, taking that up across the ecosystem, whether it's Xbox to Windows to Office to more. But I think that second one is really, you know, very much about how do we tackle the disability pipeline. And so I would encourage everyone to be thinking about, are your certifications accessible? Are your training, your digital skills that you're putting out there accessible? Are you educating people on accessibility? Are you teaching accessibility? Hector actually did a fantastic training on LinkedIn Learning that went live a couple of weeks ago. It went live along with, I think, almost 200 other courses. And we heard back a couple of days ago that it was number 3 in terms of number of users and views. Now, clearly that's because Hector's a rock star, but also I think there's appetite for this.
Yeah.
But it is not acceptable for training to go out that's not inclusive. It must have captions. It should have audio descriptions. We've got to move that forward. If you've got a certification process going forward, make sure that the website, the sign-up process is accessible. Make sure that the exam is accessible. If you've got and you're looking at how you're going to recruit people, make sure your hiring website is accessible. Because if I'm blind and I'm applying to your company, if that website isn't accessible, I am not going to submit my resume.
No.
I mean, that's just and by the way, gold dust talent. If you're missing out on that talent pipeline, you really are missing out.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I think there's a lot here that can and should be done. And then, you know, clearly as a company, we've got to keep driving forward.
Yeah.
So sorry,
it's Anna's birthday today, so I'll let her to ask the last question.
Yeah, it's my birthday, and I've had lots of Lots of lovely. I've had a really busy morning, actually. I didn't get a lot of work done. Sorry, boss, but I haven't, because I've got 4 massive bouquets of flowers. I've had shoes, perfume, cake. I've got a lot. I'm very
Stop
good
showing
with
off.
cards.
Stop
Yeah,
showing
I'm
off
not
now.
showing off. I'm just saying I haven't had a birthday like this in a while.
But, yeah, as I said, Jenny is lucky 8, so brought the luck
Lucky 8.
to you as well.
Yeah, there we go. It's the 13th, you see, it's a lucky number, really.
Yeah.
So my last question, as we close, what advice do you have for the people in the audience who want to learn more about accessibility and disability inclusion? Where can they go? Because there's been several people in the chat that are asking that question. Where do we start?
Well, happy birthday, most of all. That's
Thank
the
you,
most
thank you.
important part. And may you get off this and go and enjoy and be merry. I think that's
Yes.
very important. You know, just book yourself 30 minutes and spend some time going through some of the great resources that are out there. All of ours are on our accessibility site, microsoft.com/accessibility. You want to know about the disability divide? Go to aka.ms/accessibility commitment. You'll see all the information there, and dig in. I think the biggest thing that you can do is show yourself as open and curious, and be confident when it comes to talking about disability. In fact, if there's one thing I would say, is say the word. Don't hesitate before you say it. Just talk about disability and say the word disability. I like that word. I'm proud to be a member of the disability community. I see it as a strength. I use it every day. And I know I'm one of millions and millions of people out there. So just say the word and talk about it and ask the question, is this accessible? And remember, if people don't know if it's accessible, it's not.
Yeah.
So if you hear a fluffy answer of, well, I'm sure it's fine, it's not. If you hear that, well, I think someone, it's not. If you know, just any gray in that answer, it's not.
Yes.
Right. And all the tools are there for you to test and know for sure. Right. They're all on our website. Go check them out.
Yeah, I've put everything in the chat, so hopefully everybody can read it. So we do have a couple of questions which have come through. One's from Helen de Breton, and she asks, how has Microsoft engaged with their line managers? Is there any mandatory training? Which I think you answered. I think you said yes, everybody has mandatory training. It would be great if we could share it, actually. You know, the Microsoft training. Is that the...
Yeah, we have got this. So yes, managers are key, right? Particularly when someone's self-identifying, you got to speak to someone that's going to receive that information in the right way. So, you know, if you're a manager, really invest your time. Our trainings, again, accessibility fundamentals, it's all online. We've ripped out the Microsoft jargon, so hopefully that's helpful to you. Many companies are picking up our stuff and adapting it and then chucking it out to their companies and employees as well. So again, you'll find that we do this a lot. Whatever we've learned internally, we then take it, we playbook it, so we write it all down and then we publish it. And our theory behind that is we want you to not have to recreate the wheel. We want the whole industry not to have to recreate the wheel. If we found something works, we're going to share it. So you can just lift from us, customize it to your company, your industry, and get after it. And I will, you know, I see one comment in the chat window. I am going to just comment on, I don't see disability as a lack. I see disability as a strength. I have to comment on that because I see it all the time. I know that the word has got different parts and it's constituented, but I don't ever want to hear this diversely abled, super abled, differently abled. No, I have a disability.
Jenny, one serious question. Do you think the business leaders actually do see the strength in disabled people? Or are they still frightened of the word?
I think there's opportunity. Again, you know, that if I didn't believe there was opportunity, I wouldn't be saying things like say the word.
Yeah.
I do think that disability is not talked about anywhere near as much as it should be, given the density and demographics that there is, let alone what it is now, let alone where we believe it's going to be as a result of the huge increase we're about to walk through with long COVID, with mental health growth, with the removing of covering, and just the increase in demographics. So there's massive opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and I think Hector's being very, very diligent there, and he's putting some resources in the chat, which is wonderful, because Linda Freeman asked a question earlier, which was, all these lovely things I'm hearing about, not being very nerdy myself, I'm not sure where to find out about these possible great tools. Where would be a good place to start? So hopefully, Linda, you've had that question answered, because Hector's very busy. I've also put a couple of resources, and everybody that's on the call will be receiving a recording and a resource page with all this information on it. All click, you go straight there to Microsoft. And well, we've got 6 minutes left. Do you have any more difficult questions, or anything you would like to say more to Jenny, NASA? Because usually NASA has some challenging questions.
Well, the challenging question is Microsoft playing a central and a very effective role on the global stage with United Nations? Because the world's future, the problems really lie with education, with access to education and affordability. And I'm sure Microsoft is a massive force for good. What is Microsoft's roadmap for helping those countries to develop? And the digital skill is the future. That's where we can actually make a big difference. So what role is Microsoft playing? And more importantly, what role is accessibility is going to play in that one?
Yeah, actually part of the research that we've been doing over the last 6 months has been really looking at what we can do, not just in developed world, but developing world, where density of technology is clearly not where it should or needs to be. I think there are some key factors there that we're definitely looking at. Affordability is a huge problem. Access and availability of technology is a big problem. Understanding, and again, that training piece and awareness is very core. And there is unfortunately a connection with disability, as you compound factors. So whether it's disability in race or disability in poverty, you find a lot of cyclical things that unfortunately don't lead to empowerment. So yes, there is a lot more that we do partner with organizations, clearly huge ones and small ones, to look and identify what can we do and build the right programs. We've got a lot in the works in months and years to come on some of this. But I'll just give one quick illustration of, I think, how the partnerships come together, which is we're looking at the compounding factor of connectivity and technology. So we find that connectivity is often one of the core reasons, and the lack of it, and then the lack of hardware, so people having access to devices, let alone then add on to that digital accessibility. So we're partnering with a peer of mine who runs connectivity programs in New York and LA as a pilot, just to get cheap devices into people's hands, loaded with connectivity to their homes, and then digital accessibility as well. And we're seeing what impact that can have on breaking some of the cycles that we see happening, and partnering with universities in the same vein. But I think, yes, on a global scale, there is enormous opportunity for us to have an impact. And I look forward to digging in a lot more on that.
Fantastic. And I will ask, this is the last question, I promise. We know education is very important to the future. And as one of our great guests, that Caroline, who did the valuable 500, she managed to sign up 500 enterprises to have disability as their agenda. Do you think it's time we should get the organizations, the global companies, to sign up as education as a priority for them? Because it is massively underfunded on a global scale. And I think this is where big companies could really come together and put focus on that, because next 50 years, the world is going to face some really big challenges. And I think education is the key to unlock some of those and try to resolve them.
Yeah, education is clearly key. And I get very encouraged when I see, even within Microsoft, each different part of global society, each of our subsidiaries, in fact, our Indian subsidiary driving incredible programs. That Asian subsidiary has just driven a whole hiring disability program, the enabler program, and hired over, just within a year, like 130 people with disabilities into jobs, small, but really growing. So I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing, not just within Microsoft, but out in the global society. And bluntly, I think that there's many NGOs driving amazing efforts. Caroline's one of them. There's a bunch of others doing amazing work. And I think it is putting it on the radar. And I think the mechanics of then how do you include it within the, not just a commitment, but the operations and core behind that becoming valuable to make sure it's durable and sustained.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to do just one call to action?
Yes, yes.
But I mean, we've already put it in the chat anyway, but I just want to just drive that home as we close. Helping to close the disability divide is something that we can't do alone, and which will require partnership across companies, non-profits and individuals. Head to acat.ms/accessibility commitment to learn more about how you can help close the disability divide. And that I'm going to leave everybody with now. You've got to go home, you've got to do it, you've got to do the learning and the training and start using those tools. There are no more excuses.
Thank you.
Right, Jenny?
And thank you to our good friend Hector Minto, who has been keeping us busy with his messages.
Completely
thank you for your partnership, and thank you for continuing to push and grow and nudge and ask all the good, easy and hard questions. Again, it's imperative right now that we really lean in here and that we really make a difference. And so I'm always encouraged when I come off calls like this and just see the passion that there is. Anna, you need to go and celebrate your birthday.
Yeah, I'm going. I've got the Prosecco. Well, I don't drink Prosecco, but the rest of the people who are in the house are dying for me to open it.
And I think, Jenny, you need to have your breakfast. I'm sure you
yes,
you missed the breakfast for this.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's been such a privilege. It's been such a privilege and pleasure. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you back in UK one day soon.
And thank you, Belinda.
Oh, trust me, I can't wait to come home, folks.
As
soon as that border opens up a little bit, I will be there.
Apparently, it's now legal to hug people, so I'm sure we'll give you a big hug when we see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much.
Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.